Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I am your host, Matthew Jarvis, and today's special guest, Nic Yeomans, who is a financial advisor. Nic, you and I met at the Ed Slott conference randomly, and we kind of like hit it off, and we went and did a mastermind together, and you've got a phenomenal practice, and I'm just really excited to have you on the show today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Matt. It's been a lot of fun. Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. We got some war stories. If you ever find Nic and I at a bar at a conference, get us a couple of beers and we'll tell you some stories.
The stories we could tell. Yeah.
I mean, only hung out a few times. Well, Nic, the story I want to talk about today, and these were some things you and I were talking about pre-game, is you and I have both been in the industry about 20 years, and we know some advisors that have been in the industry as long as we have or longer, and their practices are still pretty mediocre. We know some advisors that have only been in the industry a few years, and their practices rival or even exceed yours and mine. What's the real difference you see there? Like, why are some of these advisors doing so good or so bad despite years in the industry?
Yeah, great question. And, I think a lot of it has to do with mindset and intentionality. It's like, so many people do things because that's what you're supposed to do.
Sure.
Right. So you don't ever look beyond yourself and what are other people doing? And so you kind of get locked into habits. Like I know for us for years, the industry standard was you do quarterly reviews, right?
Yep.
And it's like, okay, you end up surveying your clients only to find out most of them are only doing it because they think they have to do it. And like none of them actually want to come see you every single quarter, right? And so I think a lot of people just get locked into this is just the way it is. This is what I'm supposed to do. And, if nothing ever changes, then nothing will change. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I know that's kind of sometimes it feels like a tired cliche, right? Like, hey, if you don't change anything, nothing's going to change. Or successful people do what unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. But man, is it the truth? Like it's always the truth. Yeah.
Well, and it's like if you're not willing to challenge the status quo, then you're just going to continue to be that status quo, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I think really helped us in our firm and our progression over time was getting a coach and getting and over our career having many coaches. And I know you believe in coaching and provide an unbelievable service. You and Micah, I mean, just unbelievable what you guys are doing for our industry, and really appreciate that because you're pushing us to be better, right? Yeah. You're pushing us to be more than what we already are. And I so appreciate that. But I think, having a coach, so one of the things that we say is beware of the coach that doesn't have a coach. Okay. We call ourselves your retirement coach because we coach people into retirement. However, like for us, if I really want to do better, then I'm going to need somebody that's helped other people get there and get there differently. And so hiring that coach, I think, is a critical factor to really helping some of these guys break through these barriers. But some of these guys from 20 years ago who are still doing the same levels of, a few $100,000 of production, which, I mean, that's healthy. But, 20 years ago, that was healthy, right? But you haven't grown, you haven't changed. What could you do differently if you just sought wise counsel?
Yeah, boy, that's really a good point. And I mean, whether you're at a couple $100,000 of production or a couple $1 million of production, and when you and I were hanging out together at the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder meeting a few months ago, right? We were both, even though we both have great practices, I mean, we were really picking each other apart, saying, "Hey, you're stuck here. Like, you really need to get past that." So I guess for our listeners, wherever you're stuck, whether that's a dollar level or how your surge schedule works or a team thing, who's going to coach you to that next level?
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And who are you surrounding yourself with?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're the average of those around you, was it the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with or something like that? I mean, maybe you need to raise your gaze.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to look around and kind of take a look at, who is in your crew? Are they doing the same things you're doing? Are they being challenged? Are they, breaking through next levels? If not, maybe it's time to raise the gaze and look for, a new circle.
Yeah. So speaking of raising the gaze, you and I both have something in similar, which is we both work in family practices, right? You work with your dad, Randy. I worked with my dad, Nathaniel, for a lot of years. But tell us if you don't mind, what was the original title that Randy gave you when you first started at the firm? I love this story because there's like this idea that, and maybe this exists somewhere, like maybe Nic, you've met some multi-generational practice where they just got a silver spoon. Like I haven't seen that yet, but it's hard work. But you started at the bottom of the list, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, to this day, no one has ever made less than I made when I started. So the backstory is, growing up in the family business. So this is my dad's 40th year. Okay.
Wow.
October of 1983. Okay. And today, Dad and I are partners, and in the business context, it's Randy. And so I get ready to go to college. He said, well, son, what do you want to do? And I grew up in this business, right? And I said, Dad, no offense, but not this.
Anything but this. Yeah.
This. And he's like, that's cool. What do you want to do? I said, honestly, Dad, I want to be a DJ on the radio. And he says, well, good luck with that, son. Good luck.
That's so funny.
So I go away to college. I think God has a sense of humor. I end up doing my tour through marketing, public relations. I'm doing marketing through for a financial advisor in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I identify, what I really want to do is help people, and I can do it through this. So Dad and I have a conversation about what it looks like to become a part of the firm. He says, son, here's the deal. You come a part of the firm, I'll pay you what you're worth, and you're not worth a whole lot right now. I'll pay you just above poverty. And I said, okay. So my first week or two there, he gives me a business card with a title.
Actual business card.
With a title.
Yeah.
Chief Fecal Monitor, CFM. I was in charge of the bathrooms.
Man, that is real life. That is real life for sure. Yeah, well, and we love to joke about it. It's a funny story, but some of that is just like he was trying to teach you that humility of, right? Like, hey, I know you think you're a smart guy, and that's for all of us, right? Yeah. Like, hey, I know you think you're a smart guy and you've hit these levels of success, but there's still so much that we each have to learn. Yeah,
and that's the thing. I think, one of the things is being coachable. Yes. So I coach wrestling.
Yeah, that's right.
My dad, he's in the Hall of Fame for coaching wrestling. My whole family, like my brother's a national champ. My cousin's a 3-time Olympic medalist. Like that's like our sport, our thing, right? But the one thing that I am thankful for having is the ability to be coachable. And I think a lot of people in our industry, I know I keep coming back to this idea of coaching, but be coachable. And I had to submit to my dad, look at him and say, hey, look, I want to learn from you. I can be coachable. We're both very type A, very driven. But you know what? If I want to be the best, I need to listen to the best. I need to be coached by the best. And that's what I did. And I think one thing to really level up, and especially if you're a newer advisor, be coachable, and it's okay if you're a CFM somewhere, and, you're starting at the bottom. That's okay. Be coachable.
Nic, one of the things you mentioned, I think you called it a Randyism, is the books you don't read can't help you, which I love that expression. So Randyism, that's one of your dad's go-to sayings, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
My brother, sister, and I, we had all these Randyisms, so when we were, 7, 8, 9, 10, we're drinking Kool-Aid. We don't even know we're drinking Kool-Aid, right? Yep. Like, so one of his Randyisms is the book you don't read can't help you. Well, when you're 11 years old, you have no idea what that means, right?
Yeah.
But now I can't not have like 2 or 3 books going all the time, right? It's like all the time. And it's like, leaders are readers. We know that. And so taking in all that knowledge and, finding people like you and Micah, like what's on your reading list? Like, what are you guys reading? Like, that exchange of ideas is powerful.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because when we had our mastermind group together, that was literally the question we were asking each other. Yeah. It wasn't like, hey, tell me about your favorite sports team, or tell me what you think about the president. Like, it was none of that. It's what are you reading? Almost to the point where it became a joke. Like the butt of every joke was some book. In fact, I think Atomic Habits was the butt of every joke. Like any question you have, like, hey, what are you having for dinner? Atomic Habits, man. I'm having Atomic Habits for dinner.
Oh my gosh. It's funny, it's like your reticular activator, right? Like everywhere I went, you know what book I saw? Atomic Habits.
Atomic Habits.
In the airport, in Omaha, in the book stand, what they have? Atomic Habits. So shout out to Atomic Habits,
Hey, whoever's running that marketing team, right? We're helping them out here. But other than that, obviously that book, Nic, are there books that come to mind either that you're working on right now, or books that you're like, man, I'm really glad I found this book, or I wish I would have found this book earlier?
Oh man, I love The Gap in the Gain.
Classic.
Oh my gosh, fantastic! If you haven't picked that up, I actually put it on my kids' summer reading list, and
Oh, that's a really good
I just
idea.
like, man, and I give my kids, so if they read it, they have to give me a 1-page summary of the book, turn it in for $20. So a little
That's a
different
great
chore.
idea. Yeah.
So, but I want to see how many they'll get through. But I love that one, Gap and Gain. Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, awesome, awesome. There is a oldie but a goodie, and actually part of how my wife and I disciplined our kids early on was this book and the principles by this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Classic.
written in the 1990s. And so many
Yeah.
people are like, yeah, I've read it, only to find out, you know what? They actually haven't read it. They just know about it.
Yeah, they've heard of it.
Right. But there was it changed our practice forever. My dad got a hold of that book, and it changed our It changed him, and it changed our practice. It changed how we met with clients. It changed how we position clients. I mean, all of it. It was game changing. And even though it's older, and I get that, don't overlook a classic, okay? And every now and then we actually do team trainings on chapters of the book.
Really?
And if you asked any of my 3 daughters what daddy's favorite habit is, they'll all tell you the 5th habit: seek first to understand, then to be understood.
It's a great reminder.
And man, how powerful is that when you're meeting with a client?
That's a good reminder. Some of those classic books, and again, they can get a little bit dated, but boy, that's one of those that you revisit all the time. I just started revisiting "See You at the Top" by Zig Ziglar
Oh
that he
yeah.
wrote 40 years ago or something. He's been gone for a decade now, and it's all
So
of those
good.
classic things about how do you get yourself out of a slump and how do you do these things. And I liked what you said. A lot of us, everybody knows the knows of it. But as you were saying, hey, the 5th habit's my favorite habit. Like, oh crap, I can't remember what the 5th habit is. I need to go back and revisit that book, right? Because it's such a classic.
Yeah, yeah. And so, and again, the book you don't read can't help you, right? So, like, always have a
Yeah,
book going. I just finished something called 75 Hard. Okay.
that's right. Yeah,
And oh my gosh, like, that thing beat me up. I mean, it's not supposed to be convenient. I mean, it's supposed to be hard. Like, every individual task is not hard. It's
sure.
doing them all together and having to do them every single day. That's what's hard. But one of the things you have to do, which I thought would be super easy for me, was read 10 pages a day. I'm like, no problem, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But what I really came to realize is, like, I like to get in a specific place and time where I like to like do almost bunch reading, like where
Oh,
I'll read
sure.
like 50, 60 pages at a time, and I'll take notes and I'll get really deep into it. But then I might go 3, 4, 5 days, not 5 days, but 3 or 4 days
Couple
without,
days. Yeah.
and then I'm back, in that zone again of reading 30, 40, 50 pages. The forced habit of reading every single day, 10, as simple as 10 pages a day, uh, I really found valuable, because that's not how I normally do it when I read. But man, I really, really did enjoy doing that challenge and carrying that out.
Yeah, I think reading can definitely be one of those things like working out or eating healthy, right? You say, oh yeah, I work out every day. Well, let's pull your gym. So your gym membership says you've been there twice this month, right? So yeah, I read every day, and then you go to look at that a little bit more. Do you find, Nic, I mean, at this point, man, you've read a ton of books, right? You read a lot, like you said, 30,
Yeah.
40, 50 pages in a batch. Is your reading at this point about trying to find new things, or is it more about just getting your mind in that learner space? I mean, are you still discovering like breakthroughs when you read a new book, maybe
Yeah.
sometimes, or how much of that's like, I just need to get in a learning headspace?
Yeah. Well, I
How was that
mean,
for you?
and I've heard people much older than me say this, and I'm glad that I've come to this realization, as old or young as I am, depending on who's watching or listening right now. But the more I read, the more I learn that I don't know. Like, there's so much I do not know. There is
Sure.
so much out there that I still very much feel like a sponge. And it's, I know, like, I'm a Christian, and one of the things I believe is that
Yeah.
you can be moved by every wind and doctrine, right? So it's very easy to follow, different things that are out there. But for me, I'm not looking to buy into everything. I am looking to be challenged in what I actually believe, because it's either going to make my belief stronger and I'm going to do
Mm-hmm.
things better, harder, faster, like more concentrated. Or on the other side, I'm going to really wrestle with, why am I doing these things this way? Why am I thinking in this way? Why am I treating my spouse or my kids this way? Like, so it's really important to me to continue to read, to be challenged, because it's either going to firm up my convictions and the things I believe, or it's going to challenge the way I believe. And hopefully, just like meeting clients quarterly, it's going to change. Why am I doing it that way? Why are you doing it that way, stupid? Right? There's other ways. So.
No, I love that. That was something I enjoyed about hanging out with you at our mastermind, Nic, right? So you're very passionate, you have a lot of conviction behind what you do, but like you were just articulating, right? You're still so aware of there's so much I don't know, and there was a lot of pushback in our group, right? I mean, we're really like, hey, how are you doing this? And we pushed on each other hard, right?
Yeah.
Hey, you're looking at that the wrong way, or look at it this way. But it was never in a confrontational way. It was always just so curious, like, hey, do you really believe this is the right way to do it, or have you ever thought about it this way? Right. So I love that mindset that you bring to the challenge, the table, and idea of being challenged. Please.
Everything from marketing to staffing to operation, like, we challenged everything, and man, how healthy is that?
Yeah, it really is. Well, and our group, our mastermind, these are really successful advisors, right? They've done great things. You and your dad have built this phenomenal practice. You have a great team, but to still be able to come to the table and say, hey, this is my chance, whether you're reading or at a mastermind, of, all right, man, pick this apart. Tell me where I'm weak. Tell me where I could be making changes.
Yeah. And man, I tell you, that was so valuable. And that's, when I say raise your gaze and surround yourself with people that, can really look at you and from a spirit of helping, right? Like, I did not, like, in this last mastermind, the only thing I felt was people caring about my success. And the attitude that they approached me and challenging me was very much with that attitude of, like, why are you doing it that way? Have you considered X, Y, Z? And man, I came away with pages and pages and pages of notes to go through and sort through, because I love being challenged, right? And it was so healthy.
Hey, let's pull back around to something you mentioned earlier about, you said you did team training relative to books that you're working on, like the Seven Habits. Tell us a little bit more about that. Like, how does that work? Are you doing like a book club? Everybody needs to read a chapter. How does that? Tell us a little bit about how that works.
Yeah, sure. So great question. So, one of the things that, honestly, over the last couple of months, like, we missed a quarter here recently. Okay.
Sure.
But historically, one of the things that's been great from team building is, we believe in growing, we call it wisdom, wealth, and wellness. Okay. So we want to buy into our team from a wisdom standpoint. So what can we pour into you that's going to make you better at your job? More focused on your career path, what you're trying to accomplish, your own objectives, right? So we call that wisdom. How can we pour into that? And so from a budgetary standpoint, allotting money towards, you want to take a class at a local university, you want to go sit in a Kaplan course, you want to go to a continuing education event, I want to pour into you, because the better you make yourself, up here, mentally, like, you're going to be better here in the firm. So that's wisdom. And then there's wealth, right? So not just, regular, payroll and bonuses, but how can we encourage you to make your own wise decisions about your own portfolios, your own savings? You're setting yourself up economically for success. And then there's wellness. Real health is wealth, right?
For sure.
So, what are you doing to take care of yourself, health wise? And that could be mental health, physical health, right? But, there's so much truth to so many studies. I know you've probably read some of the same studies. The more you take care of your body, especially, I mean, the less sick days that happen, the more focused you are when you are here. The better, the more driven you're going to be. And, it's interesting in hiring people like athletes, like collegiate and high level athletes. It's interesting to see how they take care of themselves differently, right? I mean, because they had habits for so long of, like, I heard a young lady who was a swimmer. She was a collegiate swimmer. Okay. And my gosh, she was up at 4 a.m. for practice every single morning for like a decade of her life. there's discipline in there, right? And so when you find people like that who get health differently, I think that's such a positive impact on your organization. So we call that wisdom, wealth, and wellness. And so tying that also into quarterly meetings where we'll take a book and we'll pick it apart and we'll assign a couple of team members to each chapter to break it down and then present it to us, and then go do a fun activity, Top Golf, or, race cars at Andretti's, or, something like that. Man, it's time where we can all grow together mentally, but also connectedly. And I think I just made up a word, connectedly. So
no, I love it. I love it. We'll trademark that in a little bit. I love this mindset, Nic, that you shared out. I'd love for you to pick it apart a little bit more about this idea of pouring into. So sometimes I talk to advisors, I know you do too, and they feel like, man, I got to drag my team along. Like, I really got to just teach. These guys are knuckleheads. And you're saying, hey, I want to pour into these people. I really want to make their life a better place, because you care about them as people. And correct me if I'm overstating this. You care about them as people, but you also, from a business perspective, understand, right? I mean, like, the more I pour into these people and the more I take care of them and their life, the more they're going to take care of me. It's such a reciprocal.
Yeah. Oh, dude, 100%. And so here's the reality that I got. Okay. One, outside of my family, I spend more time with these people than anybody else.
Yeah.
So one, I want to like them.
Yeah.
Two, I want them to like me. And three, I want us to be vested into each other, because that's how a really excellent relationship works, right? Like, they're vested in me and my vision and my purpose here in the firm, and I'm vested in them being the best version of themselves possible, right? It's an investment, really.
Yeah,
I mean, and I'm investing in those relationships because I care about them, right? I'm spending more time with them outside of my family. That's who I'm spending my time with. Well, I better invest in them, right? I don't want a revolving door of people. Like, I want people who want to be here because they know that there's care. And like, so paying for my team to go to these conferences, as an example, these coaching programs that we belong to, like, I want my people there because I want them to be poured into. And I know some guys that they're like, man, why? I'm just going to get all of that information. I'm going to, organize it, and then I'll present it to them. Mm-hmm. You're missing the point.
Yeah, you're missing the whole thing.
You are. I mean, it's the experience, it's the environment, it's the camaraderie. It is them networking with peers where they can grow and they can glean. Like, if you're good, a team of 5 is better, right? So they're going to be networking with a whole lot more people than you can just by yourself.
A theme that stands out to me, Nic, in this whole discussion, and we could go on for hours on this, it seems like there's a group of people in the industry that just try to do like the minimum, and you're trying to do the maximum, right? You're saying, hey, what's like the maximum personal development I can do? What's the maximum coaching? What's the maximum I can pour into my team? And this seems to, when I think about our mastermind, when I think about people that have your level of success, it's really, you're solving for like, what's the next thing I could keep doing to do even better, versus some people have this mindset of, what's the least I can pay my team? What's the least time I can spend with them? What's the least number of books I can read? So maybe that's the real mindset theme that we've got here is, are you solving for what's the least you can do, or are you solving for what's the most you could do?
Yeah. You know what that really reminds me of, Matt, is like being intentional, right? So I could be haphazard or I could be intentional. Like, the whole idea behind lifestyle practices are for people who are slackers. What a bunch of garbage. I mean, I had that, that mind trash. I had that, right? Yeah. And then I was like, it doesn't have to be that way. I can be growth minded and I can have an awesome lifestyle. Like, I'm taking a significant amount of time off to be with my family this summer because I'm slaves to the school calendar, right? So, man, I'm gonna milk that. But I also have personal goals outside of business I want to accomplish. Like, I'm getting back into Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I'm doing things that I did not like. I used to kid around it, but I decided to stop kidding around. I'm going to learn an instrument. Okay. Like,
for you, dude.
Like, here I am, 43, and I can't even clap on beat. So we'll see how this is going. But I hired a coach who's going to help me learn. Right. But I'm taking radical time off. The question isn't how much time I'm taking off. It's how intentional am I being with the time I'm on.
I love it.
Right. So when I'm in office, I'm on. It's game day, baby. Like we are going to be hyper focused, hyper intentional, and we're going to knock out as much as we can knock out together as a team. And man, I'm I am personally extremely proud of my team. And I know there's a lot of great teams out there. Let me tell you, I've got a team of rock stars.
Oh
My
yeah.
team, they care. They, and if you are familiar with, traction and rocket fuel, right? Like great
Yeah.
stuff,
Great
Gino
books.
Whitman, right?
Yep.
But one of the things he says to measure your team by is, do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have capacity for it?
Yep.
And let me tell you something, I've got some amazing team members. They get it, they want it, they've got capacity. So when we go on days and we're focused, we
Yeah.
get stuff done.
I love it. That is awesome. Nic, I feel like we could jam for hours on this, but I want to make sure we give like some really specific action items for
Yeah.
our listeners. So what's an action item of all the things we chatted about or things that we didn't even chat about, an action item like, hey, this, if you're only gonna do one thing, like here would be the thing that you need to get onto.
So I'll share it like this. When I say, be coachable,
Mm-hmm.
raise your gaze,
Yep.
This all comes down to accountability, because a coach is going to provide accountability. Your circle is going to provide accountability, right? So your team, if you let them, is going to provide accountability. And so I think, even looking at 75 Hard, when I was doing that, I had a group chat with these other guys I suckered into doing that with me that provided me accountability. I'm checking with them every single day. And so if I was to give one action item, it is look at your circle, look at who's feeding into you. Does it provide an element of accountability to get to where you really want to go? And if you haven't defined where you really want to go, maybe that's your first step. Sitting down by yourself, go to a cabin in the mountains, get away to the beach, or just take a long walk, and go to a park somewhere, get quiet, and write down what is it you really want, and then look around you. Does your circle provide accountability to get to where you really want? Do you have a mentor or coach that can coach you to get to where you really want? And if you don't, maybe that's the action item. Who can provide that to you?
I love that. Well, Nic, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your story, helping us all raise our gaze and be accountable. It was a great time hanging out with you, and I hope to have you back on the show again soon. And to all of our listeners, happy planning.
Happy planning.